Hi everybody, this is your week 5 lecture. I hope the quarter's going well for you so far. We're about halfway done. Hope you're hanging in there. This lecture is going to be shorter and maybe not as good as the other ones. I'm getting over an illness that started Wednesday, and I'm recording this on Sunday. I don't have COVID or anything like that, but I'm feeling kind of woozy and bad. So, anyway, if I sound weirder than normal, that's why. This week, um, I will just set up for you your reading assignments and kind of this week's work. I'll give you an overview of what you're doing. So, The Handmaid's Tale, you're finishing that book this week. I hope you're enjoying it so far. In the second half of the book, you won't get any new settings, but you'll get new plot points. So, in the first half of the book, you were introduced to the major settings of the book, which are flashbacks to of Fred's life when she wasn't of Fred and she was just a regular person who had a husband and a kid, and she was working in a library. And then the Red Center, which is the handmaid's kind of training facility, and then the commander's house with the commander and Serena Joy. So all of those settings continue in the second half of the book, but you get kind of the conclusion of the narrative, I guess. So don't skip the epilogue. It's tempting to just think, oh, the part about a Fred is over, the book is over, the epilogue is something weird that has nothing to do with the plot. The epilogue is important and it's actually part of the novel. So make sure you read that. It's set in like 2195 or something. It's in the future. And so the epilogue basically, I don't think this is a spoiler. I'll just set up what it is. The epilogue basically is someone in the future having found of Fred's tapes that she's hidden. I don't know how she's recording cassette tapes, but apparently she was recording cassette tapes, and that's the form that the novel took. So someone has found those and has studied them and is presenting them at an academic conference. And so what the epilogue is the kind of transcript of that conference when people in the future are supposedly talking about what's happened to Fred and the stuff that they've found from her. So read that. It gives the novel some resolution, but as I mentioned in this week's discussion forum question, the novel doesn't really have oh my goodness, I've recorded this like 3 times and I keep forgetting to change this. Ignore that third discussion question point there. It doesn't say what I wanted it to say, and I thought I edited it out and I apparently didn't. What I wanted to say for that is that the discussion question this week asks you to focus on what the novel achieves through its non-satisfying ending, not through its non-linear style of narration, that otherwise it might not. So ignore this right here and replace it with unsatisfying ending. I won't tell you exactly what that unsatisfying ending is here because I don't want you to, I don't know, I don't want to spoil the book for you, I guess, if that's even a spoiler. So anyway, the other thing you're reading for this week is chapter 4 of Composing Gender. I've tried to sprinkle chapters from this book throughout the course, so every other week when you're sometimes on like the second half of a novel, you're reading a chapter from this. And that's just to kind of give us a framework for talking about gender for the class and give us some ideas of how people are talking about gender in the academic world and thinking about it. So the title of this chapter is How Do We Define Sexuality? And you have 4 essays in it. The first one is by Pepper Schwartz, who I think either used to teach at the UW or still teaches there. I think she's even been on local talk shows talking about sexuality and things like that. I think she's a professor of psychology or sociology or something? So she's kind of this famous academic who's also local, which is cool. She wrote this essay called the Social Construction of Heterosexuality, which I think is interesting because a lot of the time we kind of just think of heterosexuality as the norm and we don't question the way it's maybe constructed or the way that elements of it don't have to be the way they are. And this essay kind of takes a look at that. How is it a social construct, or to what extent is it a social construct? Sandra Bem, I think that's how you say her name, she wrote an essay called On Judith Butler, and you guys know Judith Butler now. Remember way back during week 1, like 4 weeks ago, we read an excerpt from Judith Butler's famous book, Gender Trouble. So that was the one about how gender is a performance and we're always acting out our gender and kind of we're all in drag all the time. So Sandra Bem is writing about this person, Judith Butler, and her work. And you'll see references to the stuff that you read in there, which should be interesting for you. CJ Pasco wrote something called Dude, You're a Fag, Adolescent Male Homophobia. I'm laughing not because it's necessarily funny, but because that was like the refrain of my high school. I was in high school in the 90s, and it seemed like everybody was always saying that exact sentence to each other, Dude, you're a fag. I'm hoping that's fallen out of use, but I don't know because I'm not in high school anymore. Maybe you all have heard it if you are kind of disheartening if that's still going around. So it's about homophobia in adolescent males, basically. And that kind of picks up on some threads that we've read about in previous sections of chapter 4. Nope, see, I told you I'm under the weather. Previous sections of the book. So chapters 1, 2, and 3 kind of have trends that's threads that this is picking up. I don't know what the metaphor is I'm going for there. There's stuff in this essay by CJ Pasco that relates to other things that you've read in the book, because there have been other things in the book about homophobia and kind of about the construction of male identity as being one that's hostile to homosexuals, I guess. Is that a good way to put it? Something some of you have mentioned in the discussion forums. So Patricia Hill Collins wrote this essay called Hegemonic Masculinity and Black Gender Ideology. So hopefully you'll find that one interesting too. So this section has, I think, fewer essays than the previous sections, but some of them are longer. Like I think in particular the first one is pretty long. I think the Pepper Schwartz one is pretty long. I think the Sandra Bem one is pretty short. Why am I telling you how long or short they are? I don't know, it doesn't matter. I hope you enjoy reading about defining sexuality. It's kind of an interesting chapter, I thought. So if you have questions about the materials, I should tell you. So in the discussion this week, what I'm having you do for chapter 4 is choose one of these 4 essays, whichever one interests you the most, or whatever, doesn't matter. Throw a dart or pick the one you like the best, and just tell us about it. I'm having you kind of do one of those classic, like, tell us the, give us an overview of it and tell us what you thought of it and relate it to something that's in the class. So you can relate it to something in the class in any way you want, really. You can relate it to something else from Composing Gender. You can relate it to one of the novels we've read. It doesn't really matter. So just think of something that we've read in the class and try to relate it in some way. I hope you have a